So today we're going to be talking about this essentially, IRC, ERC, in Emacs. So let's get started. And let's. It is built into the standard Emacs, but we'll get into that in just a second. IRC and Emacs with ERC. My name is Eric Collins. Thank you for coming. That is my email that you can get me at. So let's do this. On our agenda today, and I'm sorry about the screen is a little, if it's a little bit blurry, I apologize for that. We're going to talk about IRC, introduction to it, set up the basics for ERC, overview some of the commands, and a little bit of configuration of libraries to sort of get yourself going. This is going to be very non-technical. I do not know very much about Emacs Lisp, aside from what Harry just taught me right now, though I did do quite a bit of Scheme in school. So, a brief introduction to Internet Relay Chat. Started in 1988 by a guy named Jarko. It was used to replace something called multi-user task on Olubox, which was a BBS way back in the day, and it was a way to actually talk to people in between that BBS. The actual IRC itself was inspired by Bitnet Relay on Bitnet, which was this node point-to-point protocol that was way before my time. And not necessarily all that important for this, but just know that that was inspired from that. IRC has done a lot of really important things throughout history. Very important things. It was the Twitter before Twitter. Back in 1991, during a Soviet Union media blackout, where the Soviet Union was trying a coup d'etat against Gorbachev and trying to take over control of the Soviet Union from Gorbachev, they actually blacked out all of the media in all of the Soviet Union, and IRC was used as a communication tool to actually talk to all the people there and sort of figure out what was happening.
Until the guys dug up the Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
Sold it for copper.
Well, copper is really valuable. Similarly, it was used in the Gulf War. And amazingly enough, because all this was done on IRC, you can actually get logs of all this, and you can read all of them on Ibilio, I think that's how you say that, at this web address. This sort of gets you to the right place. And again, this will all be available for consumption later. And IRC also did so much more. It was the social before social, the ability to go to channels and talk to people about like-minded people about things that you were interested in. It was file sharing before there was file sharing, Napster before Napster, you know, that kind of thing, where you could actually do direct communications with people and actually share files. It did so many things, much like Emacs.
Still used by the Army for remote control, apparently.
Is it really?
Yep.
And I also know that it was very recently used extensively in order to play a massive cooperative Pokemon game.
Not to mention the pedestrian use for programmer support.
Oh, yeah? Hashtag Emacs. So let's go a little bit into what it means to actually use IRC. How many people here actually use IRC right now? So there aren't going to be too many people. How many people have used it once before and have some clue as to what the hell IRC actually is?
I use it with Jitsi, for instance.
Oh, okay. I'm going to be honest, I'm somewhat new to IRC. I actually started it as an effort to sort of talk to everybody else in my company. We use Campfire, and unfortunately, all the clients on Linux are terrible. So they involve incredible installations and are very janky and don't do a very good job of dealing with multiple rooms. So my solution to this was instead to move towards IRC, because there is actually a way to pipe all the IRC things through something called Campervan. So I've been using it basically since then, but it's been a really fun way to actually get into broader IRC from that. And because I use Emacs, I figured, why not? I can use Emacs for all my IRC stuff. What you need to be on IRC, you need a server. Very important part. You need to actually have something that everybody can centrally connect to so that you can all talk. Freenode is an example, Delnet, Fnet, all examples. You need a nick, as it is referred, or a nickname. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, interesting development. There is, as you may know, they have the virtual currencies, and they don't have a server, they have a blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a virtual currency called Foreign Coin, which is doing messaging on the blockchain. So there's a virtual currency, Foreign Coin, where they don't want to do our IRCs without a server.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that. That's really cool. So, I'd like to hear more about that, honestly. The other thing that you may need is an identity. Not every server actually requires you to have that. And your identity, by the way, is not the actual, like, who you are, but it is a way to identify who you are. Identify the nickname that you have. So it's more or less your password, essentially. It's recommended, but at least in the case of Freenode, it is not required. Though that does mean that anybody else can use your identity if you want to have a particular name. So in the case of actual identities, you have to if you want to identify yourself on Freenode, you do something like message nixserve, register your password, send in your email. You get sent a nice little email to sort of confirm that that action, and now you have a password stuck to that user. That nick. You have a similar thing going with Delnet, at least according to what they say. I have not actually used Delnet. I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but that's more or less the same thing. There's a server or there's a bot that sort of registers nicknames and gives you the ability to work with those nicknames on Freenode, Delnet, and any other IRC server. So what? Yeah, it uses your current nick. And so we'll get into that in just a second. That's going to be a part of the actual ERC thing. So you would go into, say, Freenode. You would say, I want to connect to Freenode. It will ask you what nick you want to have to that. You will connect using that nick, and then it will say either somebody already has that nick, and either you identify yourself to say that you can identify yourself, or you have to pick another one. And because if somebody else were to use that, I believe they kick you off if
it'll change yours to something else.
Yeah, it'll change yours to something else. Mine tends to get rid of just one letter if it ever thinks that I'm already logged in somewhere else. Some common commands when doing this is the message nixserve to identify yourself, your identity to identify who you are. You can join channels. Channels are the places that you'd actually go to have to do things like talk to people in the Emacs channel to talk about Emacs-y things. You can say /names to list all the names in that channel. You can list all of the channels that are there so that you can actually figure out what channel you want to join, and you can say /part. These are all commands. The / denotes the command beforehand, and the command itself has something to do.
Seems like every time I do a list, I get way too many and I can't.
It is certainly a problem. I don't know a better way to deal with that other than to see that and be able to search through it. Do you know if you can narrow that down?
Yeah, you can actually enter in like search terms, like you can do /list space Emacs, and they'll show you, Emacs dash, ES, like with Emacs Spanish.
Ooh, I need to get on the Emacs Spanish one.
Cool.
I don't know Spanish, but that'd be awesome.
That's bueno.
See.
Bueno.
So, we know sort of the basic idea of what IRC is, and there are a lot of ways to get onto IRC servers with a lot of non-Emacs IRCs. We could use something wonderful like XChat. Yeah, GUIs, great. Something that isn't at all what Emacs is, and it's, fine. We could go use Chatzilla, which is in the browser and is attached to Mozilla. Great. Or we could use something that's more like a text editor. I don't know how you say that, but I'm going to go with IRC.
IRC.
Or IRC.
I pronounce it IRC.
It's all good to me. or IRSSI. I also want you to notice that all of these, by the way, to sort of emphasize the point that we should never be using them, all of these happen to be in Windows.
No, that's not a Windows thing.
Yeah, it is. This is a putty
Well,
symbol
okay,
over there.
But I use Linux.
So let's bring on the ERC. According to the actual docs, ERC is a powerful, modular, and extensible IRC client. First developed by Alexander L. Belikov and Sergey Berezin. I don't know if that's how you actually say it, but we'll go with it. It's a pure Emacs Lisp implementation of IRC. It takes advantage of wonderful things like Emacs buffers, which means no tabs. Thank God. And it's non-intrusive, very much non-intrusive. You can add a couple of things to sort of have it annoy you more, but for the most part, it's there in the background that you can grab to anytime you want to, and it doesn't actually mess up your flow. So let's talk really quick about how to use IRC. This is going to be a really quick tutorial on how to get onto ERC, how to be on IRC, how to be on Freenode. So first, follow along if you can. MetaX ERC. Then enter server, port, and nickname. All of these have defaults, by the way. The server is going to default to irc.freenode.org or .net. The port is going to be 667. The nickname is going to be your username on your computer. You can put in whatever you want. If you tend to be me, where your username is just your first name, I have a feeling that a lot of people try to go for Eric. It also will ask you for a password. You can ignore this. This is the server password. Not necessarily something that's needed on Freenode right away. That is not the same as your nick password. That is your password just to get into the server itself. I'll explain that a little bit later. Do Control-C, Control-J, patch vim, and then you're done, and you control away on that. And just mess with everybody that's in love with Vim. You can also go to the Emacs group and tell everybody how awesome it is to be on Emacs and how awesome it is to be on ERC. So that's really it. So the Control-C, Control-J thing, by the way, is the Emacs way or the ERC way to join a channel. You can say /join in the, I guess, REPL that they have there. But why do that when you can do key combinations, right? So it's really simple, really straightforward. There are a couple of minor tweaks that you can do here and there, but it is very simple. Emacs has been around, the ERC has been around since Emacs 22.3. It has many libraries installed and enabled by default. It is incredibly extensible. It is eLisp after all. And there are a ton of libraries that are supporting it right now as well. So to give you some sense of some of the key bindings that we had talked about, Control-C, Control-J to join a channel, Control-C, Control-N to get all the nicknames, Control-M to send a message or just return. But, you know, return's kind of far away for the pinky, so Control-M. You could kill input with Control-C, Control-U, which is really the exact same as Control-A, Control-K, but, you know, that one kills the buffer and doesn't yank it into your kill ring. And then Control-C, Control-Space is one where you can go to unread channels. We'll talk more about that later. And then, of course, as Harry was reminding us beforehand, you have Control-HM to do describe mode. And this will give you a chance to see all of the different key combinations that you can have that all interact with IRC. There are going to be some that aren't actually going to be covered by ERC, some that you have to do specifically as like IRC type things. They're very somewhat rare, but you can definitely find commands online for all of these. There's a great wiki that I don't actually have a link to that I'll link to later that gives you all of the commands that you can use in the IRC. So, living with ERC, or dealing with the ERC, or as Harry may have said it, just like begrudgingly taking on ERC. Apparently the way I wrote it sounded like it was a terrible thing. No, it's wonderful though. But having ERC is sort of in the backdrop of your sort of Emacs workflow. You know, say you are on Emacs. The typical way to log into a server is sort of how we discussed beforehand. The standard way can be done using Emacs IRC. Then you can type in your server name, and you can type in your nickname, you can type in your port, and you can type in the password, and you're done. Or you can auto log in. You can either through an ERC command at start, where you can just sort of have it, well, actually, I would say this is more the ERC command at start, where you can have it sort of auto log in. You can have the ERC command that gives you all the user information beforehand, all the things that you need to have, including your password, and allows you just to log in right there. I'll show you in just a second some of the things that you might need to do for that, something that will auto-identify you as well. Nixserv EL is one thing that could be included to auto-identify you. That it's an included module basically that says that you can store passwords on it, or you can reference information about whenever you get onto a particular server that will automatically say, oh, I see that you're on this server, let me identify you as whatever username you're supposed to be, and now you're good to go, and don't worry about anything else. It would look something like, wow, that is terrible. Nope. One second. Let's see if we can get this actually zoomed in so that you can see what's going on here. Zoom text only. Well, that looks ugly, but at least you can see it. So in the case of this, where, as we talked about before with what Harry was talking about with set Q, you can set really quick the ability to say, I don't want you to ever ask me about a password ever again. You have this nice long string here where you're setting a list of passwords. This is going to be for whenever I log into Freenode. This is going to be for the nick that I have. And this Freenode password is stored in my auth.info thing that I'm loading beforehand. So here, that ERC command that I used beforehand you can set the server that you want to log into, the port that you want to log into, and the nick that you want to log in with, so that any time you use it, it will just automatically do that for you. Yes?
Going back to last time I worked, you have a quasi-quote here.
Okay.
Right, when you have that back thing, so it doesn't quote, it actually lets you substitute it with a comma.
Yep, that's right.
In that case, otherwise you wouldn't write Freenode password literally.
That's right. Actually, Harry was just explaining that to me today when I asked, why is it that I can't just do why do I have to use a backtick instead of just a quote? And it's for substitution. Basically just says, see this comma, see this Freenode thing. If I have it defined in here, then it should just substitute this automatically for the string that is already defined in here. And so in this case, what's going to happen is this, as soon as I start Emacs, is going to log me in immediately to Freenode. It's this right here, the set Q, this ERC nixserv passwords, this nixserv ERC module is going to store that and see that it's associated to Freenode. It's going to, I imagine, something along the lines of regular expressions. See that, and then it will see that I'm also logged in with that same nick, and then it will use that password to actually identify me with the nixserv on Freenode.
Also, this is actually that question that the fellow there had about keywords. You've got port and nick here. Remember you were asking the keywords? Here you've got two sitting from server, port, and nick on the last line.
So these are current keyword arguments?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's what I understand.
That's
Again.
the backtick in front of the Freenode one.
Yeah, so this is actually real substitution. There's also a comma before this. Very important. I was pulling my hair out at one point saying, why the hell isn't this working? I see this single quote. Looks like it should work. All right, so joining a channel. This is one of those ones where I showed you how to do Control-C, Control-J, #vim to troll away. This is one way to do it. You can do that. You can do the typical IRC command of /join in the REPL and then say your channel name, or you can do even more. You can do the keystrokes of Control-C, Control-J, and then type in your channel name, because Emacs, why not? But the problem is that anytime you join ERC, you have to do this manually. And why do something manually in text when you can do it automatically? So let's go to auto join. Auto join gives us the ability to automatically join things. This, I believe, is actually an auto join module, but also enabled by default. Where if you set a list of things in this, if you set a list of strings, so the first one being the server that you're on, and then the channel that you want to go to, you can do a list of lists. So here you have the Debian.org being the IRC sort of string to sort of look for, and freenode.net to be the string to look for. Notice that, by the way, I'm not doing irc.freenode.net because it does do matching rather than just a equivalence. So in this case, anytime I would log into freenode.net, this would automatically log me onto this would automatically have me join the channel for ThoughtBot and have me join the channel for Emacs. Very, 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 very simple. Very much makes your life easy so you don't have to think about actually joining any of these things. And you can just be there. Wow, that was terrible. Channel tracking. It's supposed to be channel tracking. But apparently not. Okay. So, anytime you're on a channel, that creates, anytime you're on a new channel, anytime you've joined a new channel, that creates a new buffer. But as in Emacs, as with anything in Emacs, anything that's in a buffer you can navigate to in your buffer command. You can have 1,000 of them open. But it's going to be a little bit difficult to actually go to any single one of those buffers when you want to go to something very specific, or you only want to go to the last one that you think was running. There's a great library called, still looks terrible, ERC-track.el, I believe also enabled by default, and also included already, where basically anytime you are working, anytime you've joined a channel, any activity that may happen on that, it will let you know in the bottom down here that something is going on. This is terrible, but right here, this is me showing that something is going on in this channel, this channel, this channel, and this channel, and just letting me know basically on different color codes what kind of information has last happened on that color channel, so that I can know whether the level of importance. It's just quick glance, non-intrusive, very easy, and anything that may have something active on it. This will not show, by the way, if nothing has happened on any of these channels, but at any time I want to go to any one of these channels and cycle through anything that has content actively been produced on it, I can hit Control-C, Control-Space, and that will automatically get me to that channel. That will get me to one of these channels, and I can just cycle through them, and it will let me sort of see what's been happening there. I will be doing a demonstration, by the way, with all of this. So, filling. This can be confusing and ugly to work with. You do want to sort of, despite the fact that it's an Emacs, you do sort of want to have the ability to work with it in such a way that there's a good flow. There is a fill module that that is not included by default, that you have to install either through Package Manager or through GitHub, or by downloading the actual eLisp file. That gives you the chance to pretty this up. Like, this would be confusing. There's the name, here's all this other stuff. It's hard to parse through, especially if you haven't colored it like I have. You can actually do some nice stuff where you sort of offset all of the nicks and any other information so that it's in sort of its own column and everything else sort of goes to the side, so that you can easily parse what everybody else has said. And that kind of stuff to beautify is incredibly simple. And actually, this may actually be included by default. Set Q ERC fill functions, fill static. I just basically say 22 characters set And that way, everything is in one column, 22 characters in one column, and everything else in the other column. Super simple. I'm not going to go into this because this is a bit more. Image support is pretty easy. There's a library that you can go through a package manager called ERC Image, or you can get it on Elpa and just install it. And all you have to do is just say require ERC, add to list, ERC modules, and then update the ERC modules, and that just makes it so automatically when anybody ever says some link to any image, it will try to figure out what that image is and display it immediately inline in Emacs, in ERC.
So does it look like some sort of frame buffer?
Should be fine. So what?
Does it do some sort of frame buffer thing?
That's a great question. It does it. I don't know actually.
It doesn't work on terminal Emacs, it only works on the GTK GUI if you use. There you go.
Okay, that's good to know. I use GTK, but I could use the GTK GUI. ERC chess there are a bunch of other libraries you can install. There's one where you can actually play a game of chess with somebody over IRC, and it's just as simple as saying /chess Nick, but you do have to install that library beforehand. Direct content, and that's it. I did want to actually just make this kind of quick though.